it's axiomatic that the US understands the effects social media platforms have. And I think if one cannot sit back and look at how the US is using a lot of power right now to try and ban TikTok because of the effect that TikTok is having on the young kids in the US. And interestingly, the US, they're doing the same thing when it comes to Africa, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's thinking about it. It's crazy.
I love the way you bring that up, because in that, what you've just said is the case study of what the problem is and the solution is. The Americans are refusing to have a Chinese social media platform become a dominant platform in America, because they don't want that platform, number one, to curate the content that builds the psyche of the American conscience. They do not want their European, Eurocentric culture to be influenced by a Chinese culture. And they do not want the Chinese utilizing their platform to collect information and intelligence on their people. And it goes further. There is a company that I think is DJI. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it's the biggest drone manufacturer in the world. So it's part and parcel of this content creation cycle. And the Americans, the British, the Europeans are now trying to ban DJI in their countries, because they're saying that this drone manufacturer is utilizing their drone to collect information and data points that can be utilized with AI to improve China's understanding of their countries. Now, Africa is the only continent in the world that does not worry about these things. And even if our leaders thought it was a conspiracy theory that social media is being utilized by the Americans for their benefit, the fact that the Americans are uncomfortable with TikTok should communicate and confirm to us that it's not a conspiracy theory, but it is a conspiracy reality that these guys are utilizing these social media platforms for their advantage against our own national interest. It's the same reason we should question, why should we watch Netflix? Why should we watch DSTV on the African continent created by apartheid criminals in South Africa? Why should we watch that? How can it be good for us when it doesn't show our own people, doesn't show our cultures? It shows a foreign culture that dominated us and is parasitically destroying us. We need to ask these questions. And the Americans they've already shown us that there is a reason to question these social media platforms. And what's even worse is that Google itself has become a toxic platform. Right now, we are in court with South African banks, and we're suing these South African banks for illegally imposing US sanctions. Every single article in which South Africa wrote articles in their newspapers and posted them on Google, talking about what they were doing and what their banks were doing, whose accounts they were closing, what they were going to deny Zimbabwean banks over the past 22 years, that information is disappearing from Google. It's information we can no longer reference. It's intelligence we can no longer get. It's evidence we can no longer take to use in the court cases, because they are removing it from Google. That platform can't be good for us, clearly. Because they're now influencing even what happens in court.
Africa has more than 1.26 billion people. And yet there isn't any single social network platform in the continent that has been created in the continent that is the largest in the world at all, right? Because now I'm thinking, if we are to have a platform like WeChat that exists in China right now, we can curate our own content, right? And we could be able to say, you know what, this is what we want the young generation to learn. This is what we want them to be seeing. And also, this is how we want to really inspire them. But right now, as I said earlier, we really don't have control over the content that young people are trying to consume. And Vusi Tembekwai, when I had him on the show, one of the things that he said was that you become what you consume. And right now, we are really only consumers. We don't produce anything.
Yep, absolutely. And the biggest problem we have in Africa is, if you listen to Vusi Tembekwai on Penwell's show, he gave a reference about how it is that he knows a Zionist, Jewish, Israeli business person in South Africa. And this business person keeps sending lots of money. He said cell phone number figures. So that means billions that he keeps sending to Israel. And he says, when he asked him, why do you do that? This guy said, we, the Jews that have gone out into the world and made money, gone into banking, gone into insurance, gone into everything, it's our responsibility to keep sending money back to Israel, to create new companies, but also to finance other Jews who must leave and continue to create more banks, more insurances, more mining companies that control the resources of other people, right? The Jews understand that. Cecil John Rhodes was sent from England without money by people who've got money to come and do that. In Africa, Dangote is not doing that. He doesn't finance other young Africans, not to just create businesses that make him money, but create businesses that are going to spread the African agenda and vision. Stride Masiwa is not doing that. If they are, they're developing people who just become part and parcel of a cogs of a system that is a neoliberal system that maintains the imperialist system, corporatocracy, American Western domination. They don't develop those people, those minds that are supposed to change Africa. So we've got people who were mentioned by Vusi Tembekwayo, that the guys that started in Pesa in Kenya, those young Black people should be billionaires by now. And with their billionaire status, they're the ones that are supposed to create the Silicon Valley of Africa, which Kenya is already the Silicon Valley of Africa, to now start creating the social media platforms, the search engines, because clearly Google is not a global search engine. It's an American weapon that we need to get rid of and create a search engine specifically for Africa, creating African content for the benefit of Africa. We need to create our own social media, but that can't be done by just technicians without resources, because for there to be a Facebook, Zuckerberg had to be given huge money by people like Theo, who was already a millionaire and was already putting money into Zuckerberg. For there to be a what you call it, what is this platform? There is a platform that was financed by ChatGPT. ChatGPT was financed by people like Elon Musk. So the African business person has no inclination to develop talent that is going to rise to become the future solutions to Africa's problems. Remember that thing you were talking about, that we're not supposed to be just educated for the sake of being educated. We're supposed to be educated to make a difference. Now, what annoys me is we've got people in Zimbabwe, billionaires that were created by ZANU-PF policy, Mugabe's policy. He decided to say, when the first cellular networks in Zimbabwe were given out, when the bidding process was happening, he decided to make a policy that only Black Zimbabweans would be able to bid, and then they would look for international partners to partner with them so that we can create a Black Zimbabwean business class. Out of that, a Zimbabwean billionaire was created with a cellular network that he created without experience, because the Zimbabwean government decided to give him that chance. But the reason he was raised is not just to be a billionaire, but to be a billionaire who will raise the future billionaires of Zimbabwe and the future people who are going to create the social networks and PESA and. But that business person hasn't done that. Instead, he is now known to be even taking people's ideas. His companies are now known to be taking people's ideas, appropriating them, and creating them for its own portfolio instead of raising the new talent that is supposed to give Africa the solutions for our problems. So what is our problem? Communication is a problem. So we need communication companies. We need social media platforms. We need search engines. We need repositories and directories for information instead of relying on Google, who is a weapon for the Americans. But we're not doing it. Because these guys become billionaires and then they believe I'm number one because I'm intelligent, hiding the fact that they were assisted to get there, and they were assisted with an agenda of a Pan-African government that wanted them to then help and finance future African generations. They are now financing Western projects. They become Western instruments, and they become weapons weaponized against their own people on the African continent. And then they get accolades on African continent. They get awards for being brilliant billionaires and brilliant Africans when they are serving agendas of our enemies. They are part and parcel of companies that are destroying African seeds. They've become part of that. Then leaders like Kagame embrace them, give them awards. Leaders like my own government in Zimbabwe embrace them, give them awards. No, if they are not advancing Africa's interest, if they've not used their wealth and knowledge to advance Africa, they are not serving Africa. That's why you see people like me now committed to saying, my marketing skills must be used to tell the Zimbabwean story so that we can liberate Zimbabwe from this imperialism that seeks to make it clear that Africans can't use their own resources, so that Zimbabwe can prove that Africans can use their own resources to get other Africans to use their own resources to take us out of this hole.